So the internet's cut out last time that I streamed, which was yesterday. And I decided to change the approach that I'm taking because of the way that the drag and drop works. So I think it's probably gonna be better to try to implement in the same way that they did on the editor, which is gonna be to use this DockContextPopup here. So like the tab bar has the functionality for the drag and drop already on the class, and it basically allows you to move one tab from either the same container to reorder the tabs, or to move to another tab container. But the thing that I was trying to add was the additional functionality to make it so that if the tab is inside of another tab container, it changes the structure of the scene by changing the order of the, or changing the amount of split containers that it has, and changing basically the overall layout. But the issue with this is that based on the way that the drag and drop works on Godot, works based on the macro that sets up, calls a function on the control class that sets up 3 different callables that are called during the event cycle on the viewports class. The viewport class is the main class that is going to handle the inputs on Godot and is initialized on the beginning. So as is listening to, or as is processing the inputs, it's going to check to see if the class has the parts of the functions that are going to happen on each part of the drag and drop cycle. So the get drag data is the first function that is going to run, which is the function that gets the logic and returns a variant with the data that is going to be dragged. And this is going to depend on each implementation of the class. Like they provide the functions, the types, and the function declaration as the API. But then if you use a macro to define the drag and drop behavior, you're going to be the one that implements the logic inside of the function of what happens. Then you have the can drop data, which is the function that should return a boolean, should determine whether or not the data can be dropped. And then you're going to have the last one, which is the drop data function, which implements the logic for dropping the data. But the issue is that depending on whether or not the class has the functions defined, so basically calls the macro. I show the macro is set drag forward something. Yeah, this macro here basically. You can set it directly as well, but most of the times is used. I think that they set using this macro here. This macro is going to be a macro on the control class that is going to call the set dragging forward, which is the function on the control class that is going to set up the callbacks, which are the callables that implement the logic for the 3 different parts of the cycle, and it's going to bind the from, which depends on the way you call the macro. So the from is going to be the object, and this is the part that is very confusing to understand how it works. Because on different functions you can have like different. It's either gonna be one class or the other instance calling the function. So depending on which one is calling the function, the way you think about the arguments and the way you think about the logic of the function is different. And I'm gonna show there. I'm gonna show on the tab bar the way that they or the tab container. So on the tab container they call this macro to set up the drag and drop for the tab bar. And then on the GUI inputs of the tab bar, they also call a function that is going to check, or is going to get, it's going to check if the data is being, if the tab is being dragged. But basically, the problem is that, like this is the part that is confusing. But depending on which classes, which nodes have this macro set up, is going to determine whether or not it can drop on the viewports. So the viewport's going to check to see if the node has one of the functions, which is can drop data on my case there, this function here. And if the class doesn't have this function, then the viewport's going to set the cursor to be to indicate that you can't drop on the area. So in order to make it work with the way that I was thinking about, I would have to do what I'm doing here, which is basically loop over all the children of the tab container, which are the control nodes that are displayable, and then set up the drag and drop for each one of them. And the issue is, if you have a class that implements their own drag and drop, then it's not going to allow you to put, it's going to set the cursor to indicate that you can't drop on the area, because the class that is inside of the tab container doesn't have, like, it's going to have a conflict. And I didn't dive too deep into the specifics of the class, but I know that if I don't have this, if I don't set on each one of the controls, it doesn't allow me to drag. If I do this, it allows me to drag only if it is a control that doesn't have a drag and drop. Actually, I just tested with one, which is the presenter. But it doesn't matter anyway, because it's going to give it, like, it's going to be very problematic. So the issue is, like, understanding the sequence of the, like, the structure of the sync tree and the sequence of events on the inputs of how many classes are going to have the drag and drop functionality. So I was asking ChatGPT as well, but I'm not sure if I trust the answer. Let's say basically you have this layout here. If child 2, if all 3 of these classes have drag and drop, and the child 2 is obviously going to be inside of the parents, then if you start the drag events, it's very confusing to know, or to think about, like, how do you structure the logic of the function to make it work. And I think it's just not worth it to follow this route. So on top of that, it's going to be very complicated to reorder everything. And that, I believe that's the reason why on the editor they did it the way that they did it, because the tab bar already has a functionality to move tabs across different tab containers. And the only thing that it doesn't implement is the restructuring of the layout, which is the thing that I wanted to implement. But I just seen right now, before I started streaming, if you move if you move tabs, all the tabs from a container to the other side, it looks like it changes the layout, because, like, it creates an empty space. But when I tested on my thing there, it didn't recreate a layout. It just left an empty tab container. So I'm not really sure what's going on. So that's part of this thing that I'm going to spend time now trying to understand. But if you put these 2 things together, if you put, like, the tab function, the tab drag and drop events, and you have another component which is the DockContextPopup, which they have on the editor, which is a component that is going to show a bunch of rectangles. I'm going to show there on the editor after. Then I think that you can put the logic to change the layouts on the doc context if you want that. And it's going to be kind of, like, not really easier, but kind of easier. Like, it's going to be easier for sure to think about the drag and drop functionality and the relationship between all the classes, but it's still going to be hard to change the layout. So I'm not really sure if I'm going to change the layouts also. And this plugin allows you to move. This is essentially what I was trying to achieve. So you move the tab and it changes the layout like this. But the problem with this one is that the way that they did it on GDScript, and they used other classes to do it, and the way that they did it, I think it's gonna be too hard to translate everything to C++ and to make it work with the overall stuff that I'm trying to do, like, outside of this. I think the purpose of the design that they had in mind when they created this is just to create the layouts and then save the layout and then use the saved layouts on the scene. It's not to have a scene that has a changeable layout, let's say. So it's still gonna get into the same issues. I think that's probably not worth it to try to translate this on C++ to C++. So I was testing with the file system presenter now. So if I drag here, you can see that, like, this animation here is the one that the tab bar has. But the tab bar doesn't show this by default there. It's just because I overrode or overridden the drag and drop on the dockable layout that it shows this thing here. And because I'm using the macro for each one of the controls that the tab container has. So this is the part that is confusing, is that one of the functions can be called from one class and the other function can be called from another class. So for example, it goes from can drop or gets data, basically gets data then can drop to see if you can drop or not, and then drop data. This is basically the cycle, and there's some variations there on the macros of what kind of functions you're going to define in the class that you use the macro. But this is basically how it works on a nutshell. So the thing that is confusing is that the get data can be called for from tab 1, for example, on the example here. And the can drop can be called from tab 3. So it's not necessarily that the same class is going to call all 3 functions. And this is confusing because of the way that you think about the logic of the function. So I think that's what's happening there. When you subscribe the macro to the control classes, the control classes are the ones that call can drop data when the mouse is being hovered on top of this. And then when it's being hovered on top of other tabs, because I'm calling the macro on the tab container, on the tab bar from the tab container, it also puts here. But I think that if I don't put if I don't subscribe, it's not going to show also. Like if I don't call here, this is basically the tab container that I'm using on the layouts, and this is the tab bar from the tab container. So the tab bar, the way that it works is not like, you don't need a unique tab bar class for each element that you're going to show in the tab container. You only need one. And the tab bar is the class that manages multiple different tabs. So every time you add a child to the tab container, the children are going to be direct children of the tab container. And the tab bar is going to have the logic to manage the display of tabs that are based on the name of the child of the tab container. So you only need one tab bar for tab container, and the tab bar is already initialized inside the constructor of the tab container. So this is basically that tab bar, and I'm overriding the drag and drop behavior from the tab bar. But I think that if I comment this out, then when I drop, it's not going to be the function that I'm using here, which is basically on the end there, drop data. It's going to be this function here is going to be another function that is going to be the function from the tab container, which calls the function from the tab bar that is going to deal with the logic to implement the drop. But if I do here, it's calling this one, and I think it's because it's overriding, even when the mouse is inside of another tab. And this is the point, is that the place where you're going to implement the drop has to have the macro defined, regardless of which class is initializing the drag and drop, which I think it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But obviously, there are probably reasons for this. But I think it doesn't make a lot of sense because it's more intuitive to think about it. The elements that initialize the drag and drop should have the whole ownership, let's say, of the cycle, and should think about the functions from that class perspective. I think that makes more sense. Then if you need the logic on the other ones, you just just find a way to get the logic inside of the function. So the thing here is, if I hover over this class, it shows this other cursor. And the reason why it shows this cursor is because of the viewport. So the viewport is the class that is going to call these other functions, because it's the class that implements the processing of inputs. I think it's going to be on 2035, the line. Yeah, this line here is the one that calls the drag and drop functions. And then it's going to change the display here, because it's not going to find the can drop data function on the class that is being hovered. In this case would be the presenter. Even though the presenter implements its own drag macro. And also I'm subscribing again, because when I loop over the children of all the tab containers that I have on the dockable layout, it's going to subscribe the callback functions on the control as well. Because it's going to call the set macro there. So, but even then, it doesn't show, like, because it thinks that it doesn't have the functionality here. So for that reason, I think it's a lot simpler to just leave it like this. And then I'm probably gonna, so the next thing I'm gonna do is just comment out the setting to see if it's gonna change the tabs. Yeah, that's probably what I should do. Then after I do this, I'm gonna go over with the debugger on the editor on one of the projects that is gonna open up the editor. Then I'm gonna set breakpoints on the doc context to see how they do. They do the three dots on the top of the doc to display the doc context. But I'm probably gonna put on the tab, not tab bar, the navigation bar as well. And I think I'm gonna do like it's obviously gonna be based on signals and based on the index of the docs. So like count how many docs you have, and create a rectangle for each one. I might think about like a different way to do the doc context as well. But I think I'm not really sure if it's worth it to, because the thing is maybe it would be nice to restructure the layout of the scene. Because I can see that like in some situations it might be very annoying. Like it would be a lot better for example if on VS Code you could like drag around these things on some situations. So I think that it might be worth it to try to implement this, because if I implement on the like if I create the doc context and I have a index for each rectangle that I create there, and I can put the drag and drop functionality on the doc context, and then based on how I change, I can send the information through the signals to the doc layout, and then with that information I can get the classes and then implement the functionality. But I think that first I should focus on creating the class. And also the other thing that I have to, not have to, but it probably would be nice as well. No, but actually I'm not gonna need now that I think about it, because I was gonna say the way you set this rectangle that shows here when it's dragging, like this rectangle, or change the color, is by calling a function from one of the nodes that is defined on the control class that allows you to set a component that is going to change the visualization as you're dragging the object across the scene. So they use a class on this one, which is called drag and drop panel, which I translated to C++, and I have there on my thing. And I was gonna say I'm going to implement this, but I think that's probably is not necessary since I'm gonna implement the drag and drop on the context. So I'm just gonna leave the functionality for the tab bar, I think, to drag and drop. Sometimes I've fucked this up. What makes this more confusing as well is that the tab bar uses it calls the can drop data on its inputs, and the macro is defined with the tab container. So it calls the function twice, and then it calls the can drop data from the control class instance, which is kind of confusing as well to understand. I'm still not 100% sure if I get how it determines which class it calls the can drop data from. So it's calling here. Interesting. So I didn't went over this. I went over when there wasn't any component, and I didn't subscribe to I didn't use the macro to subscribe the control classes, and that's how I know that the cursor is the wrong thing there. But I didn't went over when I had this class as part of one of the docs. So obviously it looks like it's calling the functionality on this one. And this is the problem, is like since like it has to be a generic thing, there's no way to because every time that you create a component should be part of the doc, you would have to rethink the thing here. I think ChatGPT recommended to put on the drag like the type and then change, but either way you're gonna have to implement everything again, I think, because like the drop, like Godot, this is the problem with the doc system, I think. Like not the doc system, the drag and drop system, is that like it's not gonna understand that The responsibility is from the class that is the target, not the class that initialized the drag. And that's why I think it's confusing. I think the good parts of this is that it allows you to implement the functionality that they implemented on the type container, where like this is, so I'm gonna show, but this is basically the functions. Every time that uses the macro, a class uses the macro, it has to define these functions here, because those are going to be the callbacks that the macro uses. So basically this macro here. And this is the thing that is confusing, but like the callback functions are going to be from this class here. And from the argument that the control node that they receive as an argument is going to be this class here. But they can be called from different instances of the class. So the can drop data on this type of container are I'm going to go one by one. They basically just pass they just call functions from the tab bar to see. And here, like on the first function on the get drag data, they're gonna get the path, the from path from this node here that the function is being called from, which is the instance of the tab container that subscribed to the thing. But on this one, that is gonna check to see whether or not you can drop the data, is gonna perceive this as the true. So it runs this function here from the instance of the class that the events or the drag initialize with, but it runs this function from the instance of the class that is the target of the drop. And this is the part that is confusing. So in order for the three functions to work, it has to be both classes. So I think that the can drop data and the handle drop data are going to be from the true perspective, from the target node perspective. And the get drag data is going to be from the from. And then on this class, they also have on the they have a thing on the GUI inputs, which is gonna, so like you can access the instance of the viewport, and then you can call these functions here, and then they allow you to get information from what is being dragged as well. And I think this one is more generic, so like regardless of which class is performing the drag and drop, let's say, is going to allow you to get the data, and that's probably why they use this here, like to couple like the argument, not couple like, but allow functionality from the type container or something like this to change the behavior of this can drop data. But this is the part that I'm not really sure because it's kind of confusing to understand. But I guess what's happening is that depending on which thing is being dragged, as the GUI input runs, that's going to be the function that gets executed from. So like, let's say the tab container is being dragged, then there's going to be a mouse motion input on the tab bar at the same time. And then because the tab container is being dragged, this can drop data is going to be from the tab container. But if it was another class, it would be from another class or something like this. But I'm not 100% sure if that's what is going on. So I'm gonna comment out the I'm gonna comment this out as well. I think if I don't subscribe, this is gonna trigger from the tab bar, the functionality there. And on the drop data they have on the tab bar, one of the functions there that I show is going to basically move the nodes from one tab container to the other. But what I want to see is what happens when you don't have anything. Because I think that's on my scene there, it was just an empty container, but I want to see it's going to restructure the layouts. Yeah, so now it doesn't show. It shows that you can't uh, drop on this area, but here is gonna be from the tab container. I'm gonna have to comment this out, or not comment this out. Change the or remove the breakpoints. So this is the function that performs the drop data. And it's gonna set up this callbacks. I think it's basically just moving one tab from one type of container to the other one. Yeah, so it moves here, but this is the problem. Like when I move, it just it doesn't move. It doesn't remove the thing when it doesn't have any. So I think probably what I can do is just overrides and then just call the function. The problem is that the tab container function is private, so I have to copy the code from tab container and then put on the Docker layouts and then add some additional stuff. The question is whether or not do I want this. So this is another thing that I want to see. If I put here, yeah. So this one, I think this is the move. Let's say, yeah, but here it didn't change anything. Just it still has this space. When I did this, like on the editor, I moved some of the stuff around and only left, I think, the scene on the left, and then when I move the scene to the right, the file system took the whole space of the dock. So it removed the scene from the layout, I think. And then to put it again, I had to select on the 3 dots of the dock. So I think I'm going to open the problem, like this is the issue of this, that's like if you remove, you can't go back because there is no tab. But I think that there is a way to, like the problem is that the way that the tab container is going to show the tabs is going to be based on the tab bar. The tab bar is going to check if there are tabs or not, and it's based on how many children the tab container has. So like there is a hacky way I think to put it, which is just to make sure that it always has a visible tab or something like this. But it's better to put the control node because if you don't, then you have a dangling pointer when you try to move. So this is kind of the annoying thing. So obviously, I think the easiest way to do this would be to override the whole logic on the tab bar. Actually, I want to see if I can override only the drop. I think it's probably better. But yeah, so I can test this, sure. Because obviously I don't want to rewrite the code. So I think that's only the drop logic. Because on the drop logic, then what I could do is check to see if the front tab. So I look into on how they do it. Then on the front tab, I see if the tab, either the tab bar or the tab container has other tabs. Basically check the size of the tabs, and if it's 0, then I remove the tab container from this thing. Or I make it invisible and just leave it on the scene. So the problem is which one to do first. Because the issue with this one as well is that like, it would be obviously better if I could leave. Yeah, but I think that if I override, it's not gonna allow me to. I'm gonna have to implement the thing again. Like the issue with this is these callables here. That's the problem. I can't just call this function from the other one because of the callables, so I have to redefine the callables, which is very bad. So I think probably the best thing to do is probably look into the editor first before I try to do anything. Because it seems that the editor, so I'm gonna close everything and I'm gonna go over the editor and then put breakpoints. Because it seems that on the editor it does remove the tab when it doesn't have it removes the tab container when it doesn't have any tabs, which is what I'm trying to do first. So I need to remove the tab container when it doesn't have any tabs, and so I think there's two options. One is remove, and the other one is leave, but make sure that there are tabs visible. So maybe like puts an empty control node just to have the tab. But I don't think that's probably very good. I think it's probably better to remove. Yeah, I don't really like this, but I think it is a compromise because it's a very hard problem to figure out how to change. And I think that like it is probably something to do with the design of the drag drop system, but it would be extremely hard to change, I think, because it is a like inherently complex thing because of like you can't really think about all of the possible cases in the relationship between the different nodes of the tree and like what is gonna happen on every scenario. So that's what makes it hard, I think. Or maybe there is a way around this as well, like to either like use out maybe the thing is I try to use the GUI inputs on the dockable layout as well, but it doesn't work. I think it's both because it runs before the viewport stuff runs, so it doesn't matter, like it doesn't change the mouse. Because it changes the mouse, but then the viewport changes the mouse again, the cursor, so it doesn't work. And also I think that's if you put the logic, it wouldn't work as well. So maybe there is a way to get around this. But I'm not really sure if it's worth it and like how to do it. Obviously, this I'm gonna study as well. Just the function that they use on the editor should save the layout configuration. This is the class that they use to keep track of the docs. I'm gonna have to do it differently. I think I said that before because they designed this to work with a specific layout, which is just the editor layout. But on the class that I'm trying to create, I have to think about all the potential layouts that I can have there. I think that probably if I put the thing that I don't like about the editor is that it's not intuitive. Like for someone that doesn't know anything, should know that you can change the docs. Like it took me a while. I think it was just because I was seeing on the video from someone to know that I could change the position of the docs. And I think it's just a hard thing, but I think it's probably better to put it on the navigation, like to make it clear and also accessible to change the position of the layouts or the docs. I want to see how they create this thing here as well. So I'm gonna go based on the tooltips. I wanna see how. So probably I should try to implement this first, which is this three dots thing here. It's probably this one doesn't have. Because I think this one I remember that is subscribed through the doc manager or the editor doc manager, and subscribed as a singleton I think later. Not sure, so maybe I should look into that first. So the class that the doc popup context is the class that creates this stuff here. So this is the class I'm gonna try to, but I think I'm gonna try to make it different as well. The issue, so I think that the tabs are kind of irrelevant because you can change the tabs with drag and drop them, dragging and dropping them. I think I'm gonna try to make my stuff based on like the whole tab container. But maybe it is a good thing to have because it allows you to change specific things. So this is the stuff that I was saying is like after I moved here, it if it was on my scene, it wouldn't do this. That's the thing, because it would keep the thing there. So I have to see. I guess it's probably better to just look into the manually go over the editor doc manager than think about. To put see if I can find places to put the control. If you right click as well, it shows the thing. Is that this is gonna be different, so I'm not really sure if it's worth it. But maybe I can get the information for the icon, and then I can search the icon in this class. But this class is gonna, I think it initializes the editor doc manager, and this one it adds on the constructor. So it adds the tabs here. I think it adds the singletons to the tabs later. This basically is gonna update the tab initialization, like the tab properties, tab container properties on this thing here for each one. Just the initial thing that they have. And then it's gonna set up callback functions as well on the connect here for tab changed. Now I'm thinking about the where I'm gonna initialize this class. Because if I wanna connect, the thing is if I want to show the visualization on the navigation, then the navigation needs to have the access to the class. But the dockable layout needs to have access to the class as well. So if I create one instance outside and I create a function on dockable layouts to set the class, it's probably not very good and it's gonna be very hard to make this work. So obviously the other solution would be to have two different instances and then synchronize them, but not sure if I like that very much. Because the thing that I didn't realize and I didn't think about is like based on these functions here is that I'm gonna have to update the state of the context, the doc context, based on what happens on the scene. So like obviously it shows the correct thing there. But I'm thinking like maybe it's better to make the logic like I put the doc context. It's gonna be on the navbar, but I can traverse the scene tree, then get the tab containers from the scene tree, and get the tabs that they have. Then like create the visualization based on that. I don't need to synchronize. And you would be mainly to like set up this emit the signals to change stuff. And maybe that would be better. But then it wouldn't be connected. Like I wouldn't have the three dots there on each tab. But I think that probably doesn't matter that much. Because like it's at least for me, it's a lot more intuitive. Like dragging the tabs is very intuitive and it's a lot more intuitive to have the layouts like as an option here So like put or maybe change layout's not very good, but some description that makes it clear that is something that can change the structure of this thing, structure of the docs. And I'm not really sure if it makes sense to put like this here. It's like what is the benefits of having the thing there? If you can already, because if the purpose is to move the tab, then it's already easier to just drag and drop. The main purpose of this should be to change the structure of the scene, I think. And it can't, so you can only click there, you can't drag. So the way that I'm thinking about doing is like the same components here, but then make the squares based on how many tab containers you have and then draw. The question that I don't know is whether or not to change the order of the tabs, but I think probably not, because it makes more sense to make the tabs draggable, and then to make this pop-up to be only something that changes the layout of the scene, changes the structure of the scene, but allowing to. But the thing is, like, would it be intuitive to make it so that you can? But I think it doesn't matter that much because, like, if the description is clear on the navbar, then I can put a tooltip as well, and it would be like people would probably just know to drag, but maybe probably not. The thing is that I don't see another option, I think. The other question would be like how to restore the original. Maybe I can have like a button. Because if you have a button to restore everything, then it's probably not very good. Like it would be the situation that is annoying. Because I found myself on the editor is like this situation here where you move the dock there, and then like to put the thing on here again is like a lot of work. Because I have to figure out how to go there. And I don't know, it's very like it's not very intuitive to know how it moves, I think. Obviously, the first thing that I want to do is just drag the tab to the position and then drag the other one to the bottom. But obviously you can't do that because of the drag and drop thing. So I think like I should try to achieve something like this on the pop-up here. So I think I probably shouldn't. I think I should stick with the tab containers because it's gonna be easier. So I just loop over the scene, or I subscribe in the beginning. I can make it based on a state, like a variable. So I'm gonna put probably this class on the navbar, and I'm gonna have to put a function on the navbar to update the state of this class. Because I think it makes more sense to initialize the class inside of the tab bar instead of creating a function that sets the context. So it makes more sense to couple this DockContext class with the navbar and then create a function to change the states. And then I can synchronize, or I can get the initial structure of the, like, subscribe how many tabs, how many docs exist. But the problem is, I think the question would be like in most situations, because obviously I don't want the order to matter that much, because then is another thing that you have to remember, like have to initialize the layout first, because the layout's definitely gonna be, maybe actually not definitely, No, but yeah, I think in most situations the layout's gonna be deeper on the tree than the navbar because the layout is going to depend on the position where you put the node because of the way that I'm doing things. This is something else that I was thinking about whether or not should change, but I think I'm just gonna leave it like this because it's easier. Because now I'm using a VBox container, like the dockable layouts inherits from VBox container, and the reason why is just because it makes it easier to make the each dock take the whole space of the thing. Each tab container take the whole space. And if I make it inherit from container, then they don't show up on the correct way. And the issue with this is like I could make it work by getting the functions from the VBox container and then implementing on the dockable. Now, maybe I will do this at some point, but I think for now it doesn't make a lot of sense because just like copying the same functions probably. But maybe in the future it's better to do it because then I can probably try to simplify and just remove everything that is not related to keeping the size. Because it is understandable the way that they did it, the layout, because it's a lot easier because it's a very hard problem and it's basically the same logic from that the browser uses, the websites, like the organization of the structure of the page depends on the hierarchy of the tree. So like Flexbox container and stuff like that, they like it's a class that determines the how to structure things inside of the space. And the thing that makes it very confusing is that like one structure is going to depend on the parent. So it's annoying because it restricts the movements of the space on the children of the scene. So like the deeper you go on the scene, the harder it becomes to maintain flexibility because the variance increases. Like you're more capped, like more limited by the nested heuristics that propagate throughout the tree. So that's the issue. And because the purpose of this is to create like a generic layouts, because very hard to think about because it has to be generic, obviously. So like the concern I have is that there's like infinite variance of how many things I can put on each dock, and then there could be like infinite amounts of edge cases that are gonna make me regret having this structure, and then I'm gonna have to change to another container. But then if I change, it might like expose a bunch of different problems. So this is the reason why I'm thinking about this now. I think I'm gonna leave it like this for now. I'm just gonna go over this class here, manually go over, and then see if I can find the breakpoints. That's probably better. Probably on the constructor is the best thing to do. So maybe I should write, I think I should write the stuff that I'm thinking about on the structure of the class. It's like the doc context is going to be initialized. And this is the part that I was thinking about now. Just like how to make it so that Because I think on the dockable layout, the way that it works is that it creates the layouts from inside of the class, depending on the enum that you have there. So when I call the function, I can call with a different enum and then creates a different layout. And then based on that, it updates the state of the dictionary that is used to serialize the scene. And then when it deserializes, I put the dictionary on the hash map, and then I create the functions based on the hash map. So in order to put content on the tab containers, I'm probably gonna create a function on the. Maybe I should do that first. Should create a function first. And this is obviously gonna be, so it's just gonna be a function that's either, I think I'm gonna do it based on the index because it's easier. So because I'm manually creating the layouts, it's easier to see, and there aren't a lot of situations where there's gonna be a bunch of layouts, a bunch of docs. Because if the variance of docs increases too much, then it makes more sense to put the logic inside of the class instead of the component that is gonna be inside of the doc. So I make it based on the index, and then I find the doc on the dictionary based on the index. So create the layout first, then then add the contents to the doc. On the layouts. So I should probably have a structure. No, but I already have this structure. Yeah, I don't need to. The only downside is that I'm gonna have to remember to set. But I think that there isn't a way to get around this. So I'm probably just gonna use the index, I think. So the index and the standard name that all of them are gonna have. So we use the same function on the context. But I think it probably is not. Yeah, I think that making based on the integer is obviously better because there's less space for mistakes. So all that I need is to know the amount of docs, and then to. Yeah, but the issue is like, so maybe I should have the like x and y coordinates. So like you have the amount of docs and then what level they are on the tree. Something like this. Because the issue is like I'm gonna have to reconstruct the relationship between the rectangles on the doc context based on the on how I initialize them on the layouts. So that visually on the rectangles on the context is gonna be the same as the structure that they exist on the layout. But actually maybe, so there's two different ways. One is to get the information first. Then from the information I construct the tree states. The other one is to, I think maybe make it on the name. And then on the doc context I create based on the name. So like I keep track of how many names are how the names of the docs that exist on the layout on the doc context. Then when the tree is initialized, the doc context gets the nodes by traversing the tree. Then from the nodes, it creates the rectangles. The other approach is to create the docs on the layouts. Then as I'm creating the docs, the thing is I'm already gonna have the information for the docs because I'm already saving this for the layout. So I can get those variables from the layouts to create the functions to get the dictionary that I'm saving the state or saving how many docs the layout has and the indexes. Then from that, I can create a function on the doc context that creates the visual representation. I think that is kind of confusing to think about. because like it's gonna the way that they look on the scene is gonna depend on the structure of the split containers, I think. So like it's not very obvious how to translate the dictionary into like the correct position of the rectangles of the context. So I'll be right back. I think it's probably better to implement first, and then like I can think about an easier way to do this on the context, because it doesn't have to necessarily be the same as the layouts. Like I can make it based on the index and then just change the or like The question is how to. Yeah, I think I'm gonna separate and I'm gonna think about this later. So once I have the doc context, the problem is that I'm gonna have to add the navbar, but maybe initially I do it based on another components on the dockable layout. The question is how to know. Yeah, but if I do it this way as well, I'm going to have to synchronize that. I think I need to make it based on. So I need to. Probably the best way is to get information, to set the state of the context based on the names. I think it's gonna have to be on the names because I need to find them on the tree. So like initialize the layouts, get the names of the docs, then call a function to set the states on the context based on the names. Then the notification ready of the context, use the names to get the nodes on the tree, and then connect signals, uh, just see if there are other changes or their position changes, and then do logic on the to change the rectangles. Yeah, but the tabs are not gonna change the container. And because I'm only gonna represent the containers, I would only need to have the original. But if I don't make the logic, the drawing of the context pop-up to accurately represent the structure on the layouts, then it becomes a lot easier because all I need is the amount of indexes that's the amount of tabs you have, then I save that or yeah, save like as a number on the context, and then based on that I create the rectangles. Each one has an index, and then when you move the rectangles, it sends a signal with the index to the dockable layouts, and then based on that, the dockable layout changes the nodes on the tree. The problem is to remove and add docks. So I'm gonna spend time studying the source code here. It's probably better to go over from the constructor, I think, first. So maybe I should write down what things I need first. So I think I wanna see how they create the button. The button might be useful for other stuff. One interesting thing that I'm thinking about. Yeah, but that one would need. I think I do need to figure out how to represent based on the structure of the layouts, how it's gonna look. It's basically an algorithm that changes, or the gets, based on the tree structure, it creates the rectangles. I think it probably wouldn't be hard, actually. Just navigating the space based on the tree. I need to first create a simple dot context pop-up. Then I'll think about the rest. And that's basically what I need. So like as it traverses the tree and encounters the information, it builds the other classes based on the way that it traverses. But I'm not like sure how that it will look like, because I need to figure out the other. So that's why I think that I need to create the simple one first. Then as is traversing, I just change the logic. So probably gonna encapsulate on the function to create the elements. I think I want to make it bigger as well. So like it would essentially be a representation of the layout of just the tab containers that is going to be draggable. And then I can have additional options to remove or add additional tabs. And then I connect them through signals, and then the dockable layout has the functionality to create and remove additional docks, because the thing that I was thinking about is that a lot of situations probably you're gonna have docks that have more tabs. So what you can do is remove all the tabs of the thing, and then you go on the manager on the dock context pop-up. Then you either remove that or you add another one on another position on the scene, and then after you add the new dock, you put the other tab on there. Yeah, so maybe it would be better to leave it the way that it is there now, where it doesn't remove the tab container from the scene if it doesn't have any tabs. And then make it so that you can remove by clicking on the layouts options. But maybe it's probably better to remove. I think it's probably better to remove and then give the option to add another thing on the scene. But I'm just gonna have to spend the time thinking about how to do this on the context. I think it's probably better to try to figure this out here first. I think I should just start trying to do it. It doesn't look like it just initialized this one, doesn't do anything else. This GUI base is gonna be the base class of the, so it adds directly to the root of the editor node. It's like the class directly connected. The first shell that it adds from the editor node is this one. And I just realized as well. Now another thing I can do is use the dock manager, because I was thinking about only using dockable layouts, but now I remember that it might be a good idea to, because after I started creating this dockable layout here, I thought that there wouldn't be too much of a purpose to the dock manager, because it wouldn't do anything. Uh, the only thing that I could do is probably like save stuff, the save configuration and stuff like that. So the question is whether or not it's worth it to put the dockable layout as a member variable of this. Then I initialize the dock context on here, and that would make it a lot easier to The only problem that it would be very annoying is that I would need to add all the nodes to the class, and I don't want to do that. Like the biggest thing that I don't like about the other one is like the way that I'm doing now, or that I'm thinking about doing, is that on the doc context I'm gonna have to get the owner, which I don't like very much, to get the roots of the scene, because I need to get the root to traverse the scene to build the states, and I don't like this. So it would be better if I can guarantee that the doc context is always gonna be like on top of the layout, because that way I can just get the children, like traverse through the children, and I think that's more reliable. But I can't connect them directly because of the navbar. So I'm not really sure if it would be worth it to put like make the navbar should be part of the doc manager, encapsulate everything in the class. I go back and forth on this as well all the time. It's just whether or not to create a function or to create a class that encapsulates everything and then make it as part of the class. Because like the way that I'm thinking is that so there should things that probably if you're doing like if you're not doing a game or something like this, just a application, you're probably gonna have an navbar and you're gonna have the space, the layouts, and on some situations you're probably gonna have the like fixed nodes that are outside of the layouts. So that's like gonna be a pattern that is gonna repeat on everywhere. So if I create the doc manager, I could have like a function to set the navbar, then I have multiple different navbars to choose from. Then I have a function or I initialize the layout, dockable layout inside the doc manager. And I initialize the doc context. The question is how to, I think that I have to couple, unless I make it based on, like instead of, but I'm not really sure if I like this very much, but instead of opening, because the way that I'm thinking about now is like when I click, so I'm gonna have an option that has like layout, the name or some description of this thing that's the doc context pop-up. And then when you click on it, it's gonna show the element that they show there on the editor. But what I could do obviously is put like another thing here, just an option. And then based on the option, I open, like I send a signal and then I create the the layouts after. Yeah, but I think that doesn't make sense. Maybe it does though. It might be better to do it something like this. But it wouldn't solve anything. Like, because I would still need to initialize the class here on this one, which is kind of annoying because of the nature of the tree there. But maybe it's not a big of a deal. And I should just like design the class so that it gets the roots. Maybe I choose a standard name for the Docker layout class. I think that's probably what I should do. And then I find this class from the other one. And then I throw a warning if it doesn't. That's probably better. So I find this class, and then once I get this class, I create methods here to get the information from the docs. Then using that, I create because I'm saving both the docs and the splits here on dictionaries, and then I put them on hash maps. Problem is that I would have to do this. The thing that I don't like is that the like uncertainty of the way that it doesn't seem very good. The problem is that like I would have to put on the notification ready of the contacts, and I'm already putting here. So like maybe it works on some situations where it creates the hash map on this one first, and then the other one gets this class and already has the hash map. But maybe on some other situations, it doesn't create the hash map, and so like these kinds of things is very annoying. This increases the chances that there's gonna be an issue. So for that reason, it's probably better to get from the roots, but then the roots is also the same kind of thing. Like the most reliable way is to directly connect them, obviously. The problem is that I can't really, it doesn't make sense to create a class if I don't know, because I think creating the GUI is going to be relatively easy. You just look for the nodes here. It's probably going to be on the constructor or the draw for this class. I think that's already looked into this. I think it's probably these places here that create the rectangle. The rectangles. So I can just copy the way that they do here. The part that is hard is the logic. So like to summarize is basically this. Like there is a tree structure, there is the splits and the docks. Then from that structure, I need to create the rectangles based on that structure, and I need to create a component that is gonna. So this is another question. So like one would be to translate our algorithm to translate tree structure into the grid. The other one would be to either to make it So file dialog, which is the class that I'm using on the navbar there, is the class that they use all over the editor as well. Is like a class that allows you, basically that function there is the one that is going to open the dialog of the files to select. So it allows you to create that thing once, and that you reuse everywhere based on the signal, because it's always going to be the same pattern. Just select a file or a folder, and then you make like when they press OK, you emit a signal. So it allows you to create the class once and then change the behavior based on the signals. So based on the inputs and outputs of how you're going to interact with the class. And I think that makes sense to make the doc in the same way. So that way it would be like an option where, but I would still need to create a class here, I think. So I have access. I either create a constructor or create a function that sets the class. But the reason why I don't like to set the class is that's going to be very annoying as well because of the like memory leaks and stuff like that. But just increase the chances that you're gonna, and also because of the state, like I need to create the scene from outside, and if I need to cache the scene based on the variant, it's not very, like there's extra steps to synchronize everything. Yeah, but actually, like if I make an option, then I can make it based on the, I can just put a label and then send the signal, and then based on the signal, I can put the thing on another class. Yeah, I think that's probably the best way. So the other decision is whether or not to put this on a creates. Because this would make it easier to, maybe not make it easier. I think it would actually, like if I create the context inside of the, if I have another class, which is the doc manager, I create the context inside of the doc manager, and then I create the layout inside of the doc manager. It makes it easier to couple the logic of both of them. And then on the other one, I would put this on the root. And this is the issue though, is that like based on the way that I did the layout, the function is gonna, depending on where I put the layout, is going to change the tree. That's the problem. So I guess integrating with the, like inside of here would be the best one. Yeah, yeah, I should just put here. So I think that this, the reason why I didn't think about putting here in the first place is because of the navbar thing. So I think that's probably the best way to do it. So like I make it as an option. So make as a regular option on the menu. Then sends a signal, connects, signal. So I can look into how they structure the file dialog thing. Because the way that I'm thinking about it, it should be like a something. It could be something that opens up in the middle of the string, the same way that the the thing does. And then like I have a bigger rectangles that show the layout of the scene. And that allows you to rearrange everything. That's probably better. Because if I have that, then it allows me to put the drag and drop. And yeah. So I can use the same structure as well. The only difference would be it's kind of like I'm recreating the layout. Yeah, so I can just use the same nodes if I put on the layout. So I can create a function on the. So I think I'm gonna try to do like this. So I have to think about these steps. So I think probably create the simple one first. Then. So I'm gonna create a simple class here. I already have this one, which was from the other, from the plugin, the translation of the plugin. I think, so I'm not sure. Should probably delete these other classes as well. I created a bunch of classes that were translations of the. I think I'm just gonna delete all of them. So I also copied them on the other project. It's basically these classes that were translations from the plugin that I was trying to implement this approach first. So I think I'm gonna remove all of them before I do this. I'm gonna compile and see if it runs. Because that way is gonna make it easier to. Like, it's gonna be less confusing when I add the new class. So I do think that this is the best approach probably. So putting like it's not very good to make it as an option because it becomes less intuitive. But it doesn't matter that much, and I think that the benefits of decoupling are far greater than making it more intuitive there. Because it makes a lot more sense to create the context inside of this one. Because the context is obviously going to depend on the state of this one. So if I make it based on here, then I can guarantee that I'm going to have the tree structure of the layouts. Because I'm saving the docs that's... The docs and the structure. Not the structure, but once you have the nodes, then you know, I think. And maybe I should... But if I'm not, then I can obviously also find a way to store the order of the nodes on this one. So I can look based on what I'm gonna need on the context. Because it essentially is gonna be, I think it's basically the same thing. Maybe it is easier if I have like which one is the root. So I should probably start the root of the layout, like the node that is added first of each layout, because then it makes it a lot easier, because I can traverse that and look into the hash map. Because if I can traverse the tree from the roots, then it makes it a lot easier to create the grid, because it's basically the same structure. I think I should actually just recreate the scene. Just the layouts and not the tab containers, but maybe the tab containers as well. Because like the main point is going to be to decouple the drag and drop logic from the scene. Because that way it allows me to have the drag and drop without interfering with the control nodes on the tab containers. So it's essentially the same thing, but then allows me to implement on a different thing. And then I just synchronize them based on the movement. And then I emit signals Then from the dockable layouts, I changed the actual tree based on the signals. And I'm probably gonna draw this on Scalar Draw to make it clear. But I need to make the other steps first. I don't think, if I'm gonna delete this, then I might as well just change everything. Instead of deleting the file, then I just reuse the file. Which name should I put on this? I think I'm just gonna put dockable layout pop-up. I think I'm probably gonna. So I'm gonna do a mix, I think. I'm gonna see the file dialog class, then copy some of the file dialog on some of the doc context. So the logic, I'm gonna create a function, I think, to create the rectangles. And then I inherit from the same class that the file dialog inherits from. I already had this one from lots that I. Hmm. I think this one I copied the initial stuff. Yeah, but I'm gonna make it from the beginning. It's whatever. So I'm gonna delete this other. I'm gonna close this stuff, compile again. Actually, maybe now that I think about it, like it's probably not necessary to create the rectangles. Like because so I should study the logic of the file. file dialog first. Like what I need to see is how to create a pop-up in the middle that is big. And then I just get the tree state from the dockable layouts. And then I recreate the tree inside of the pop-up. That's what I need to do. Because then it's going to be the same. And then I don't need to recreate the rectangles because I'm just going to use the split containers as well. The only difference is going to be that on the pop-up, I'm going to call the macro and set up the drag and drop functionality for each one of them. Actually, I can do it for the tabs as well. So I basically just recreate a mini thing without the controls on each dock. And then I implement the functionality to move or to change the layout structure on that. And I put some additional information probably. So I wonder if I can create another scene. But I think that wouldn't make sense. Because it has to be dynamic, so that's the problem. But I think that's... It will be as if it is kind of like a different... So I'm just reusing the state of the dockable layout to create another scene on the pop-up that represents the original one. Then I synchronize both of them through signals. So maybe I should create the option, the navbar first as well. So like the question is how to test this in the easiest way possible. I think I'm just gonna add a button initially on the scene. Actually, I can get the logic from the navbar and then I just add the navbar there and then I just create the stuff now. I think that's what I'm gonna do. Because I need to have... So maybe I'll do this first. So I'm gonna create the beginning of this, and then I'm gonna add additional option on navbar for sending signal. Then I connect this to the scene that I have there, and I already connect everything. So I'm gonna connect the signal from the layout to from the navbar to the layout, and then I have to create a function on the so I need to create the initial of the context, put that on the dockable layouts, then create a function that receives the signal and then print to the screen. Now this is gonna make it easier because then I don't need to think about the thing there. The only concern is the size of the thing. But if I make it shouldn't be a concern because it should be able to open all the way. So it's just like another thing. But it can be kind of annoying, but I think it doesn't matter that much. Because it's just something, like it's a ghost thing that allows you to restructure the original one. And it doesn't have the control. So like the bridge between the two is going to be a signal that works based on the index of the tabs, index of the docks. Then I put the logic inside of the function on dockable layout to remove the node from the tree and put on another tree based on the movement of the drag and drop on the pop-up. So I'm going to ask you this show GPT to see what it says about Like I should probably test this first, but I'm pretty sure that it is possible. So I'm gonna ask you this to ChatGPT. It is possible to set up the contacts. I'm gonna yeah, close this. I'll be right back. Yeah, actually, it's almost the time for the break that I put there. So I think I'm gonna take a break for 20 minutes, and then I'm gonna come back. I'm gonna continue to work on this. I'm gonna see if I can fix this stuff before. It's probably I forgot to delete. So I'm just gonna follow the list here. So I'm gonna finish creating this simple version here. Then I'm gonna set this as a member variable on the dockable layouts, initialize this on the constructor, then create the simple option on the navbar, then put the navbar on the scene that I have there, and then connect the signal from the navbar from the option to the dockable layouts, and then run a callback function from the dockable layouts. And I'm gonna print that to the screen to see if it's working. Then once I have that, I'm gonna be able to know. Then I'm gonna think about like how to structure the dockable, how to structure the context. So like from the function, I'm gonna have to think about the states, how to recreate the state of the scene just with the tab containers and the split containers to create like a ghost scene on the pop-up, and then I can put some additional buttons on top of that, or something that allows. Because on that ghost scene, then I'm gonna be able to set up the drag and drop macro, and then move the nodes on the layouts on the ghost scene. Then from that, I'm gonna send a signal when I reorder the tree. I can reuse the function as well. So like I can use the same function on the doc context that reorders the tree with the dockable layout to actually reorder on the original scene. So I'm gonna take a break of 20 minutes and then I'm gonna follow the steps after. So I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. That might be harder than I thought because of the file dialog. Like it's actually a class that I created, but I basically copied from file dialog. It inherits from confirmation dialog, which inherits from accept dialog, which inherits from window. And the window apparently doesn't have notification functions. So I didn't spend too much time. I spent some time studying these dialogues because of the other stuff that I was studying, but not enough to understand exactly how they work. I think that on most of them they're gonna call some function on the window that is gonna actually uh, open the dialog or open the pop-up, but I'm not really sure how it works to set up what's gonna show on the dialog. So if it is too complicated, then maybe it's not gonna be like a very good way to do this. 'Cause there might be easier ways. But I was thinking that it's gonna be like a lot of work to. Not only I'm gonna have to implement everything that I was thinking about implementing originally, but I'm gonna have to create a whole new thing just to do this. So might not be worth it. Yeah, but it looks like it compiles here. Let me see if yeah. So I'm gonna put this class on on this one here. So the question is what name to put on this. Or maybe just layout pop-up. It's whatever. I'll think about later. Also, I realized that it's better to add the tabs when I'm uh, translating everything to hash map or when I'm setting the pop-ups. Not setting the pop-ups, setting the drag and drop. Because then I just do everything in one place and it's easier than having to remember here to add each one. Because this is mainly for when the docs don't have anything to show the tab. Because if you don't add anything, then it doesn't show the tabs. I'm gonna read the ChatGPT answer. Problem is that like having the roots node. I guess I can make it as a node. I'm pretty sure it's hallucinating there a little bit, but I'm gonna test this. So it does have a pop-up here. So give it a pop-up. I'm mainly thinking about like what is the best way to restructure or to recreate the sync tree from the information that I have there. Because the thing is, obviously it's easier if I have the root, so I can store the root as a node here. But I wonder if because the way that I'm caching, I think like there is no connection between them, just all the nodes. And I was thinking about like getting the roots, like you cache the roots every time you create a layout and or when you reconstruct. Yeah, but then when you reconstruct, how do you know which one is the root? I guess the root is always going to be the zero. Yeah, the root's always the zero. So it's either the zero splits or the zero dock because of the way that the count works. But it shouldn't be that hard to figure this out. I think I need to figure out the other stuff first, then when it gets the point, I'll think about this. Yeah, so I think that this should be step number one. So I'm gonna add additional option on the number. I think I was gonna copy from the editor, but I can just get this one, I think. So I'll do it here. This main menu. I'll think about this later, what you put here. So I remember this was bugged on the initial thing when I translated to some other thing. Yeah, there's probably another way to set this, the tooltip. And also it doesn't matter that much for this situation here, I think. So to add a signal, all you have to do is call this macro and then basically do this here. So this is gonna be the arguments, and this is the name of the signal. I think I don't need any arguments for this one. That's because it's on the menu. That's whatever. Oh, I comment this out because of the node. These properties only exist on the control. Maybe the signal should be different. Should be open pop-up or something like this. It's not actually gonna change, just gonna open. And then here I'm gonna put handle pop-up. I think I'm gonna put in the ends of this. So I'm not putting the functions on the plus DB. Hmm. It's definitely because of the roots. The dialogue doesn't change anything on the layouts. So it should be because it changed the roots and it changed the values. This is what I mean is that that's like is one of the annoying things about the way that the structure works. Because if you change one node, you can mess up the other ones because they depend on each other for the layouts. Not for the layout, but for the dimensions. Maybe I should change the class and then just pass the functions to this class. It feels kind of... Because it might be very... It's gonna be a problem, I think, eventually. Well, the issue is that I'm not really sure if, like... I think I'm gonna be forced to use a standard node on the as a root whenever I want to use these layouts. Actually, I realize now yeah, I should make this a control and then put the VBox on the root of this thing instead. That makes more sense. But the problem is I'm not really sure if it's gonna work with the dimensions of everything. So I think this is happening because of this thing here, and probably because of maybe it's interfering. It's just very annoying. So maybe for now, just change this back. But I do think that I'm gonna do this for sure, which is just change this to control and then make the root of the thing to be a VBox container instead. It makes a lot more sense. But the issue is I'm not really sure if it's gonna mess things up, and then if it does, I'm gonna have to think about how to change, which is very annoying. Because I was thinking about doing this as well, like get the part of the function from the VBox container that makes sure that the containers are gonna take the whole space, and then I just put on this class. Just find the logic and try to simplify and put it in this class. But it's just very annoying to do, so I was trying to avoid doing this. I'm doing one thing at a time. So first, let's see if it works like this. I just move to node again. Now it works. So it was because of the, but obviously it's fucked up here. So the menu is overlapping the thing. Hmm. This is like behind the container. Like the problem with this is that obviously like I'm not. I'm more sure that there are probably situations where I want to use different roots than otherwise, and like the approach has to work with any node. I was using a panel here. This is kind of one. I think it's because so I'm gonna try to add this, but if I add as a child, I'm gonna add another one, another VBox. Because for now I just wanna test to see if it's gonna work there. Let's try this. The problem with this is that I'm not really like maybe I should test with different controls and different options here, but there is no way to guarantee that it's gonna work. So I guess I should test with like the base nodes for each class. Now, obviously, it's either gonna be node or control, because it doesn't make sense to make a layout for the 3D scenes, unless I encapsulate the layout inside of the control node. I think I should test with nodes, the base node and the control, and different flags. But I should probably use the same flags on the beginning. I think I should make it just control nodes and then set the anchors. Then probably change. I am going to change this for sure. So I'm gonna change this to control and then put the node as the root of the layouts. That makes a lot more sense, I think. Then just move the flags to the roots. Because that way these nodes, but it might mess up the structure. This is basically what I'm trying to achieve. That, and that's the part that I'm not really sure, like how it is even possible to do this. It has to have the same structure and same relationship between on the nodes inside of the dockable layouts, regardless of what's going on outside of the layout. That's the part that's hard. And I'm not really sure if it's possible to achieve this because of the way that the design works. Because if you have like the parent containers, they change the behavior of the children. And the reason why they did it like this is because makes it easier to think about the like different screen sizes and resizing everything. Just it's something that is kind of annoying as well on the browser. It is very annoying. It's like CSS. So because of this, I think that there probably isn't a way to complete like isolate the parts of the scene, like regardless of uh what are its parents. And the problem is I can't click here. Hmm. Yeah, but I'm pretty sure it is working. The signal, as otherwise, like I don't see why it wouldn't be working. The name of the signal with the thing, the function name being the same, is kind of weird. I can change the thing there. I can remove the nodes from the layout to test this. I think I'm gonna stop streaming now, and I'm gonna because this is gonna be very annoying to solve, and it's not very interesting. You're just gonna spend a bunch of time like changing these nodes to make it work with the. I'm gonna try to see if it is possible to isolate the, like to ensure that I always have the same structure inside of the dockable layout, regardless of what's going on outside. Then like once I have that, then if I have that, if I can achieve this, it makes a lot easier to think about the rest. And I need to solve. I'm pretty sure that the signals is working. And if I want to test, just comment out the layout here to have less nodes, just so I can click the button there. But I'm pretty sure it is gonna work. I don't see why it wouldn't. So what I'm planning, I might change the names of the functions because it might be confusing as well. But what I'm planning on doing is putting the. I'm gonna have to spend a bunch of time studying the file dialog and the pop-up classes, the confirmation dialog classes, to understand how they work. But what I'm planning on doing is having a pop-up. I'm gonna use this class inside of this function that is gonna reconstruct the scene on the pop-up, and it's gonna be just the skeleton of the scene and not the whole scene, and which is gonna allow me to implement the drag and drop. And then on the normal scene, I'm just gonna leave the default drag and drop behavior from the tabs. So that way you can move the tabs around. Well, actually, what I have to see as well from the editor is how do they remove the nodes from the scene. So I think I'm gonna spend time going over with the debugger to see what happens. The problem is that it's gonna be kind of hard to find this, I think, because I wanna see how the because on my scene there, when I remove all the tabs from the tab container, it doesn't remove the tab container from the scene. But on their stuff, it does. But I guess like it shouldn't be that hard. That I can just. One thing that I can do is look for the macro here. I think they don't use the macro. Yeah, they don't use the macro. But I think what I can do is just set the macros and then just put the same functionality that they use on the tab, and then just add an additional logic to check to see if there are tabs, and if there aren't, then just remove the tab container from the scene. So I think that's like on last case scenario, that's what I'm gonna do. But I'm gonna try to see if I can figure out how they do it from the doc manager here. Because I think it is probably better to remove the tab container if there are no tabs on the containers that are leaving the empty space. And then I make it on the skeleton of the scene. I figure out a way to create, to add new docs to the scene and put tabs. I add and remove tab containers from the scene. And that's probably is gonna be very hard, I think. But I'm gonna focus on I'm gonna try to solve these things offstream the layout stuff, which is more annoying. The other stuff. And I'm not pretty sure how hard it's gonna be, so I might next time the stream maybe I'm not gonna have to solve this yet. So I might try to solve on stream. But yeah, I'm gonna stop streaming now and I'm gonna try to solve the simple stuff on the layouts, and then next thing that you should do is to figure this out. Just taking the problem to another, like to a skeleton of the scene, and then implementing the drag and drop on the skeleton, and leaving the other one with just the tab functionality. Yeah, so see you next time.